Greetings to all of you. I want to do something a little bit different with this video and be talking about the upcoming new moon on June 25th. But I want to talk about that beginning of a new lunar cycle in the context of a larger planetary cycle that we're experiencing with Jupiter's movement into Cancer, but also Jupiter in its cycle with Saturn. Some of what's challenging as an astrologer is that as we try to look at the energies active at any given time, we're dealing with cycles in the context of other cycles. We're dealing with layers of planetary energies in their relationship with the stars. It's like these energy patterns are all at work, interplaying, intersecting. And as we know, and as I talk about frequently, it's not as if these energies of the movements of the planets and the stars are controlling us or are predictive or deterministic. But I do think they are guides, helping us to discern the intelligence of our cosmic consciousness that's supporting us, our planet, our solar system, our galaxy, all that is in its evolution of consciousness in this time of growth and change and creative unfolding. So it's helping us through these patterns to understand the energies that we're experiencing here, that we're experiencing within ourselves, and how it is that we can be in right relationship with these energies and in harmony with the energies of the spheres. I did an interview yesterday with David Clements, and I have such profound respect for him. He's a brilliant theoretical physicist, but he, through his own spiritual awakening, is so aware of what it means to come from the heart and what it means for us at this critical transition time as humanity to open to higher consciousness, which is that capacity to be in connection with our hearts and our higher hearts, which give us that infinity point gateway into the intelligence of the cosmos, into the living energy fields of the subquantum and quantum realities that we live in. And I think that the stars and planets are trying to help us connect with these living energies of the cosmos, to make their messages clear to us. And as we listen to them, and as we attune to them with our hearts, then we can be back in relationship with cosmic consciousness. We can be back in that right harmony with all that is. And then we have the capacity to be in this profound time of transmutation into Homo luminous ones, into beings of higher consciousness, multi-dimensional beings, remembering that we have the capacity through our hearts to open to that sub-quantum level of living energies and infinite possibilities. So hold that awareness and that larger context as I explore with you what are some of the energies that are at work right now with Jupiter and its cycle, Jupiter in its cycle with Saturn, and how that relates to the energies of the solstice that we're experiencing tomorrow as I'm recording this, and the upcoming new moon on June 25th. Let me start this exploration with talking about Jupiter and its movement into Cancer and some of what this may mean for us and how now it's in its larger cycle with Saturn. We experienced Jupiter's movement into the sign of Cancer on June 9th. It will be in that sign for approximately a year, from June 9th, 2025 until June 30th, 2026. Remember that Jupiter's orbit is a 12-year orbit, so it spends approximately 1 year in each sign. And remember that Jupiter is this planet of possibilities, of expansion, of abundance. It's supporting, expanding, enhancing whatever sign it's in. So we now are experiencing its movement into Cancer, guiding us to honor that Cancer energy of compassion. How are we in compassionate relationship with ourselves, with each other? And remember that Jupiter is also the planet that relates to our beliefs and how we're perceiving things. Mercury is the planet that is associated with our thoughts and more left brain ways of thinking. Jupiter is the planet that's associated with more of our right brain ways of knowing. How are we seeing the deeper meaning of things? How are we understanding the patterns around us? That more holistic, integrative way of understanding. And I think it's very significant that at the time that Jupiter moved into Cancer, it was conjunct Mercury. And they were and continue to be in a square with Neptune and Saturn in the early degrees of Aries. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I do believe that Jupiter's movement into Cancer is not only expanding that energy of compassion, Cancer, but supporting us in how we're reconfiguring our beliefs, our lens through which we see reality, to be coming more from a place of compassion. But as I mentioned, it also was in this square with Neptune and Saturn, and Jupiter will continue to be squaring Neptune and Saturn within a 5-degree orb until July 14th. So we're seeing Jupiter also expanding, supporting, activating this profound conjunction of Neptune and Saturn in Aries, which, as I've talked about in earlier videos, I see that conjunction of Saturn and Neptune as how are we integrating our spiritual understanding and experience, Neptune, with how we're bringing it into form, Saturn. And it's interesting that they have been in this ongoing conjunction with Ceres. How are we moving into new forms, Aries, in how we're experiencing our relationship with the Earth, Ceres? And Ceres is also about how are we nurturing in relationship with each other. So I see this square as guiding us into new forms and ways of being that are dissolving the age of Aries paradigms of power over, of separation. Those are the shadow aspects of Aries that we've been caught in since the age of Aries. And I believe this configuration is supporting us in moving into new ways that we can express our sense of self, Aries, to be coming from that integration of our spirituality with how we are putting that into form in the world and in our relationship with each other and the Earth. But to do that, we have to move into new ways of seeing, of thinking, of new beliefs and new stories about our reality, about ourselves, about how we experience what's going on around us. And as I've mentioned in earlier videos, I do believe what's powerful in this conjunction of Neptune and Saturn, in its dissolving Neptune, the out of balanced age of Aries energies. I really believe this conjunction of Saturn and Neptune in Aries, which will go exact in Aries in February of 2026, is very powerful in trying to guide us in this transition time. And I do see it as guiding us into new forms and ways of being and supporting us in releasing the out of balanced energies of Aries and the age of Aries that we've been mired in for the last 4,000 years. And I think with Jupiter square with Neptune and Saturn in Aries, it is activating our awareness that we need to move into new ways of seeing, new ways of thinking, new stories about ourselves and about our journey as humanity and about what is going on in our world in this time. For the last 4,000 years that we've been caught in some of these stories and perceptions and seeing things through that lens of the out of balanced age of Aries paradigms, power over, separation, conquer or be conquered, competition, greed, corruption, destruction. The stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we tell about our human history is that war, competition, struggle, survival of the fittest has been our evolutionary journey and is always a part of our makeup as humanity. Those of us who've explored earlier, ancient, advanced cultures, pre-history, before our modern understanding of history, we know that that is not true. We know that there were no signs of wars until the age of Aries. Some of us who are here in this time remember what it was like to live in harmony with all that is. We remember what it was like to live in that spiritual awareness of being in right relationship with the sacredness of the life around us. In this time of the Kali Yuga, the last 5,000 to 6,000 years, we've forgotten that and gotten caught in this whole other perspective on our evolution as humanity and who we are. We are needing to dissolve and release that and release those stories, release that lens through which we perceive reality to effectively move into the new paradigms of the age of Aquarius, which are about justice, beauty, harmony, balance, sovereignty of the self, and the sacredness of community. This is what we're capable of. But if we don't dissolve those out of balanced age of Aries paradigms of power over, control, sense of separation, we can be on a trajectory into the age of Aquarius that is very destructive and is the shadow aspect of Aquarius, which is technocracy, an idealization of technology, an increasing paradigm of power over and control, and an increasing loss of our understanding of who we are as humanity, an over-idealization of our minds, and an increasing disconnection from our hearts that can lead to transhumanism. The age of Aquarius is guiding us to remember the capacity of our consciousness, to remember, as David Clements would talk about, the infinite possibilities of the sub-quantum field that we can open to, not through artificial intelligence, which is totally caught in that mind paradigm, but by coming into our hearts to open to that gateway to cosmic consciousness, to remember who we are and what we're capable of as we move into higher consciousness. I believe the energies as we're exiting the Kali Yuga are moving in a very accelerated way, trying to help us remember who we truly are, trying to help us come back into balance, trying to help us move into that higher consciousness that will only come from coming back to our hearts and not staying mired in our minds. So we need new stories. The stories we tell ourselves about the planets coming from our traditional astrology that has been shaped very heavily by the myths and stories of ancient Greece and Rome in particular are all about war, conquest, competition, jealousy, struggle. Read those myths and stories that relate to the names of our planets, and particularly think of Mars, the Roman god of war. So I believe this Jupiter process, particularly in its cycle with Saturn, is guiding us into new ways of seeing and thinking, new beliefs that are coming from compassion, and new ways of then implementing that in how we live in the world as it's in this square with Neptune and Saturn. Let me talk a little bit more about this Saturn-Jupiter cycle that we're now in the first square of that cycle. Many of us remember that Jupiter and Saturn went into conjunction, exact conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius, December 21st, 2020. Solstice here in the northern hemisphere, winter solstice. In the southern hemisphere, the summer solstice. Remember that Jupiter conjunct Saturn, these cycles of Jupiter and Saturn are about every 20 years in terms of their synoded cycle. I think it is highly significant that they started this current cycle that they're in at 0 degrees of Aquarius, guiding us into new beliefs and ways of being. Remember that Jupiter and Saturn are indicating a new cycle, a new cycle of personal growth, a new cycle of change in our collective consciousness. And they were guiding us to birth that new cycle in the energies and archetypes of Aquarius. How are we moving in to the age of Aquarius? How are we coming into community, collaboration with each other to co-create new ways of being together in our world? So that was the seed point of this 20-year cycle. Now, as we move into this solstice, June 20th, summer solstice here in the north, winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, we have this first square of Jupiter and Saturn. And I've talked in depth about this solstice, powerful solstice time. So I don't want to go more into depth in that, except to reiterate that Jupiter, in its movement into this first square with Saturn, is in the sky, and I'll show this to you in a few minutes, in the upraised arm of Orion. Order coming out of chaos And how are we moving into that order? How are we moving into these new beliefs, new forms and ways of being? Through coming into compassion. Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. And remember that the first square in a cycle with planets is a crisis in action. It's this choice point. What direction are we going to go in? What are we going to do with this cycle? So it's been seeded by let's move into new forms individually and collectively that are a reflection of the Aquarian paradigms. Now, as we experience this first square and crisis in action, how are we going to move forward with that to begin to bring it into form? By coming into compassion, by remembering Orion, that we can move out of chaos into order, to remember who we truly are, to come back into balance. But only if we dissolve and release these Aries paradigms from the age of Aries that are out of balance. Before I move into looking at the new moon, let me just show you. Remember, when we have a planetary cycle, whether it's we're looking at the lunar cycle and the dance between the sun and the moon, or in this case, we're looking at Jupiter and Saturn and their cycle together. Remember that the time of the beginning of that cycle, the conjunction, is what is being seeded for this cycle. Then the first quarter is crisis in action. How do we move forward to bring that into form? The opposition, whether we're looking at the full moon, or in this case, the opposition of Jupiter and Saturn, is what is meant to be the full expression of this cycle as it comes into fullness. So let's just glance, and I'll talk about this more as we get closer to it, but let's just look at what the energies are of Saturn's opposition with Jupiter at that critical point in their cycle when it's telling us what this journey is really meant to bring into full expression. So as they continue in their journey, Jupiter will come into opposition with Saturn, the slower planet, on November 19th, 2030. Remember, they're in a 20-year cycle together. So this is midway through their journey in this particular synoded cycle. But here we see the energy of this cycle at its peak as it's coming into clarity, into fullness. And we have Jupiter at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, opposite Saturn at 6 degrees of Gemini, and it's very significant. They will be conjunct the lunar nodes with Jupiter on the north node, Saturn on the south node. I think this is a powerful theme guiding us in the fullness of this cycle into new beliefs and how we bring that into form and how we integrate and balance right brain ways of seeing and thinking, Sagittarius, with left brain ways of putting that into structure and action, Saturn in Gemini. But Jupiter in Sagittarius is in the sign it rules. It's powerful. It's here in conjunction with Venus and the North Node, supporting us in moving into new beliefs, new stories, new perspectives, new ways of understanding ourselves and our world. Sagittarius, remember, is that constellation in alignment with the galactic center. How are our new beliefs and stories in alignment with cosmic consciousness, with our source, to guide us into these new paradigms of the Aquarian age? And Jupiter will be in trine with Neptune, supporting us in these new spiritual ways of being and expressing ourselves. It'll be in alignment with Pluto, our transformation into the Aquarian age. So I very much see Jupiter guiding us as it's moving into a new sign, but also as it's powerfully now in this first square in its cycle with Saturn, showing us how, as we're in this powerful time of transition, coming out of the Kali Yuga, moving more fully into the new paradigms of the Aquarian age, clearing, purging the out of balanced patterns of the past, it's supporting us in new ways of thinking, seeing, new beliefs, new stories, new perspectives. Because if we don't change our beliefs, if we don't change the lens through which we see ourselves and our world, we will repeat those energies. If we see our world as always going to be mired in conflict, competition, war, struggle, strife, suffering, we will repeat that. We will keep enacting that. But if we heal from the traumas from the past and we change our beliefs, I've really seen and come to understand more and more deeply for us as individuals, as we heal our trauma from the past, we change our beliefs and perspectives. When I was doing my shamanic training and we would do soul retrieval work, how do we reclaim lost parts of ourselves that have split off because of trauma in this lifetime or past lives? It always also involved what are the contracts, the unconscious beliefs that we locked into in coping with those traumas from the past. So if you've experienced the pain of abandonment in your childhood, you may unconsciously lock into this belief, I can't trust people to be there for me. Sooner or later, they will leave. And if that is the unconscious belief that you're functioning from, you will tend to be caught in replaying that pattern. So as we heal, as we release the trauma and clear the trauma from the past and work that emotional healing process, we're releasing the beliefs that we locked into in coping with that trauma that then shifts not only our behavior, but the perspective through which we see ourselves and our reality to come into more trust, Jupiter, faith, Jupiter, that my life can be different. People can be there for me. And I think in a profound way, Jupiter, as it's moving into Cancer in this powerful square with Saturn, is saying, let go of your beliefs that we are separate, that we are separate from each other, that we're separate from our connection with the earth, that we're disconnected from the love of the cosmos. Remember, we're held in love, in compassion. We can reshape our stories and our beliefs to come home again to our hearts, to our connection with the sacredness of all of the life around us and the remembrance of our oneness with all that is. So let's now explore this new moon coming on June 25th and how that lunar cycle is nested in and interwoven with these other cycles and energies that we've just been talking about. So the new moon on June 25th will be with the new moon and sun conjunct at 4 degrees of Cancer in conjunction with Jupiter. This is why I see this all as so interwoven. And therefore, this new moon will be a part of that ongoing square, Jupiter squaring Saturn and Neptune, that will be ongoing within a 5-degree orb until July 14th. There are many other aspects of this new moon, but I want to stay with these core themes that weave in with Jupiter and its cycle, but to point out a few other significant aspects in this new moon. One other aspect is this powerful square between Uranus and Mars. Mars has now moved into Virgo as of June 17th. So it's an out of sign square, but they've been squaring each other since June 14th and will be squaring each other within a 5-degree orb until this new moon. And then the next day they will move out of orb. But I think what's significant about this square is it's calling us to transform our actions. Mars, Uranus, have clarity, break free from the patterns of the past, transform our ways of being. And interestingly, as we will see in the sky when we pull up the where the planets are in the stars, Uranus is still in conjunction with Sedna by the stars of Pleiades, squaring Mars, now conjunct the royal star of Regulus. We need to act from our hearts with courage. So as we're moving into these new beliefs and this new compassionate way of being, let us transform how we act to allow it to be coming from our hearts with courage. We continue at the time of the new moon to have the conjunction of Nessus with the North Node, reminding us to heal and release these ancestral generational patterns of trauma. I think it's very significant that the new moon and Jupiter are now opposite this powerful combination that I've described in earlier videos that's been going on for a very long period of time, of Ixion, Pholus, and Quawar. I really see this configuration as guiding us to let go of the patterns of narcissism, of sense of separation of self, Ixion. So I'm out for my own ends in an impulsive way, no matter what the consequences. And Pholus is saying, clear that, heal that. The lid comes off. It is time to stop these patterns. To Quawar, come into balance and harmony with all that is, and then bring that into structure and form in our lives and in the world. Capricorn. I've really been trying to explore Ixion because I know Alan Clay sees the positive side of Ixion as how we may follow our passion to be in our unique expression in the world. I actually see that theme as much more associated with Eris Xena. I actually think Ixion may be a Kuiper Belt object that's guiding us to wake up to the dangers of ego consciousness, to stay cognizant of how when we get caught in ego consciousness and lose our connection with soul consciousness, it can lead us into the kinds of behavior that we see in the mythology of Ixion that are about impulsivity, acting out of his own selfish goals and needs in ways that were harmful to others and ultimately harmful to himself. So I do see it as that kind of wake-up call for us. But I think its deeper positive meaning may be, how do we integrate our ego consciousness in alignment with our soul consciousness so that how we embody who we are and act is in balance, in right relationship within ourselves, with others, with all of life. And I believe that is the powerful theme of this combination of Ixion, Pholus, and Quaoar. So Jupiter conjunct the new moon opposite that is bringing that into focus, that as we move into compassion, we can support ourselves in healing these patterns from the past and moving more into harmony within ourselves and with each other. Let's look now at where all of this is at work in the stars, in the sky, at the time of this new moon. Before I look at where the new moon is in the sky, let me just remind you of June 20th as we're in the solstice time. The sun is in conjunction with Jupiter in this upraised arm of Orion. Again, the theme of moving out of chaos into order, into that remembrance of how we can live in harmony with all that is. And I had talked about that Uranus square with Mars. You can see Uranus in its alignment with Sedna here by the stars of Pleiades in the shoulder of the bull of Taurus. And here is Mars conjunct Regulus, the heart of Leo the lion. So that Uranus-Mars square that can often mean impulsivity, acting out, accidents, ruptures, if we're not working it consciously, is actually saying transform your behavior and how you act to be coming from your heart, to be coming from your heart with courage. So these powerful energies are guiding us to heal the trauma from the past, to change our beliefs, to then act in different ways that aren't coming from coping patterns, that aren't coming from reactivity, that aren't coming from survival mentality, but are coming from the heart with courage, expressed in compassion. Jupiter in Cancer. So as we get to the new moon, you see the new moon now with Jupiter. They've moved out of that direct alignment with the upraised arm of Orion, are now here close to the stars of Gemini. And as Jupiter moves in its process across the year, it'll be moving in our tropical zodiac chart through the degrees of the sign of Cancer. But in the sky, as Jupiter goes direct and then retrograde and then direct again, it will actually be moving back and forth through the stars of Gemini. And remember, the archetypal meaning of Gemini has to do with the twins, Castor and Pollux, representing the energies of light and dark, mortality, immortality. They represent polarities, and they're guiding us with Jupiter, focusing on those stars in how we can reweave our experience of polarities so that we're not caught in polarization with each other or within ourselves, but we're coming back into integration and unity consciousness, reweaving the balance of day and night, light and dark, mortality and immortality, and no longer caught in that polarization in our beliefs. Jupiter is helping us transform how we see ourselves and how we see our reality, and what are those beliefs that we are adhering to, those stories we tell ourselves, and the lens through which we see our reality. In a profound way, we are being guided as we move into higher consciousness to radically change as humans, to move out of this third dimensional way of being that locks us into materialism, to seeing only physical reality, that locks us into polarity and polarization, that locks us in to our own fears about our mortality, that keeps us mired in a sense of separation and ego consciousness. These energies, in a powerful way, are saying, remember who you really are. We're moving into a new age. The energies of the sun and galactic center are downloading these new ways of seeing and being, expanding our pineal glands, calling us into higher consciousness, to remember our capacity to come back to our hearts and a remembrance of unity consciousness, to then forge our beliefs and our ways of seeing ourselves and reality, not from the trauma of the past, not from the illusion of separation, not mired in power over paradigms that lead to conflict, competition, war, violence, suffering, but to remember our capacity to be these homo luminous ones living in a multidimensional reality, living from our hearts, opening to the infinite possibilities that are available to us when we remember that we are a part of cosmic consciousness, that we, through our hearts, not through our minds, as David Clements would say, can open to the living energies of the subquantum field that is opening us to that higher intelligence of the cosmos, the capacity to tap into regenerative energies, to move beyond polarization and polarity, to open to our soul selves and our soul consciousness that is about the energy of infinity. Then we remember we are held in the love and wisdom of the cosmos, and that is also within us and can be how we perceive our reality and how we live in relationship with each other, in harmony, in balance, holding the beauty and wonder of the sacredness of all of life. These energies so powerfully are supporting us in this transition. And I do believe that Jupiter is guiding us into new stories, new perspectives, new beliefs. And I encourage us as a community to co-create those together, to channel those together, to open to how they're coming through us, how we are being informed by new stories, new beliefs, new ways of seeing, as we absorb these energies coming to us and absorb the energies of the sun and the galactic center. They will show us the new stories, the new ways of seeing and being, to reframe how we see each other, the planets, the stars, and all that is. What an exciting, exhilarating time this can be if we dare to awaken, to heal, to transform, to release the constricting beliefs from the past, to open to compassion and love, to come back to our hearts and reclaim, recover, remember that higher consciousness that we are truly capable of. Blessings and love to all of you. Blessed be.